tried so many goddamn times to film this video. First time, didn't like how I worded anything. Second time, I didn't like the bit I did. Third time, there was an audio issue that I couldn't get rid of and was annoying me too much to continue. Fourth time, loved the take, and then the file got corrupted. So this is try five. Five, you know what they say. Five times, fifth times. Fifth time's the charm. Hi, I'm Jay. Yes, I'm doing an unpopular question mark opinions video. Today's tea is passion fruit juice. I'm not sure how uncommon these takes are gonna be. I tried to hit on things that I didn't hear often before we start. Current whip, just as a check-in, I wanted to show it off because I'm starting on the first sleeve. I finished the collar. We don't have to talk about the hem. I'm going to fix that if I have time. But yes, I am showing the right way. This is the front. It took so long to figure out how to pick up the right number of stitches, but I managed it. We're good. And let's get that untangled. And I have to do, I just finished a side, so the loop isn't showing, but I'm doing magic loop for it because the cable is just a little bit too long. It's Heels and Needles Knits test knit for the Bastille sweatshirt. The due date for the testers is April 11th, but I'm trying to get as much done as possible before April. So I've got 6 days, 5 days, somewhere in there. There's 31 days in March, right? Yes. Also, it just turned off, but if you hear any background noise, it's the AC. But anyway, the reason I wanted to make this video, crochet and knitting are different things. Full on. They're not the same thing. Crocheted fabric is not knitwear or knitted fabric. They're the same thing in the way that oil paint and acrylic paint are the same thing, which means they're not. They're the same type of medium, but oil and acrylic are not interchangeable, not in the slightest. You have to use different techniques with them to use them in the most in the ways that play on their strengths the best. Typically, you have to take different things into account. Oil paint, for example, can be a lot more forgiving depending on how you use it because it dries slower, but it dries slower, especially if it's humid out. And there are fumes. It's not necessarily as safe to use. Acrylic is not necessarily as forgiving if you like to blend paints and render and things because it dries quicker, but also it dries quicker and it doesn't give off fumes, at least not the ones I've used. They're not the same thing. You can get similar looks if you try hard enough with oil paint and acrylic paint, but they're not the same thing. Same deal with knitting and crochet. So why is it rude and not worth it to correct people if they come up to you like, "Oh, are you knitting?" and you're crocheting? It's not a rude question, and you don't have to answer rudely. And it's weird to me that people are assuming, or at least seem to be assuming, that you're answering rudely. Because to me, that's a conversation starter. Assuming that the person being approached is fine with being talked to in public, it's a nice moment of human connection. And you can start different conversations. If you just say, "Oh, yeah, no, it's knitting," you can still talk about what you've made and things. But if you say, "Oh, actually, I'm crocheting. Here's what I'm making," or even if just stopping at "I'm crocheting," and they ask, "Oh, what's that?" And now you have a different conversation that's just as interesting, you know? And that gets crochet as a concept out there and helps people understand what it is more, which also helps open up the conversation about sweatshop crochet, for example. It's harder to fight against things like that if you're equating knitting and crocheting as the same thing. And I get that it's not that deep for the layperson, individual interactions wise, but still, they're not the same thing at all. Period. End of story. They are different skills. They are different mediums, and it's okay to say that. Another thing, here comes the AC. I don't even know if you'll be able to hear it in the final cut, but I've had trouble cutting the sound out. Anyway, thrift stores, finding handmade things in thrift stores and secondhand stores. Why is it sad? Like, I understand why it's sad because usually, like, we associate the quilts, like quilting, embroidery, and other needlework, crocheting, knitting, we associate them with grandmas, right? So, of course, someone's thought is, oh, this thing is handmade. Someone must have died, or the gift must not have been appreciated. And, like, maybe not, though. Maybe that was a crafter clearing out their extra things that they don't want anymore that they've made. Maybe it's because it wasn't appreciated, but now it's somewhere where someone who will appreciate it can pick it up. Statistically, probably there because the owner's dead, which is sad, but I don't get why it's a big deal. That's how a lot of things in thrift stores and secondhand stores end up there. And again, I understand from a human level how it is sad that it didn't get passed on, presumably because there was no one to pass it on to. And like, I also understand from a crafter's perspective, I would be upset if I saw something I made for someone at a thrift store. But I would prefer it go to someone who actually will want it and use it, or unravel it to make something else than it languish in storage or get destroyed because someone's not caring about it or be in a landfill somewhere. And part of this is probably just the way people comment on things. And it's connecting through a shared emotional experience. At the same time, I don't get why people get so mad, so like angry at someone reusing and repurposing a handmade item that they got at like a secondhand store. What's the big deal? For real. Don't we want people to get their materials secondhand? If someone is undoing a crochet afghan, oh no, they're going to use the yarn for a sweater instead. How horrible. Oh no, someone's cutting up the quilt to make some pillowcases. Throw them in jail. What do you want? It's finding a new home and a new purpose. And that's fine, actually. Another thing that I don't think people have considered, or at least I haven't seen people consider, about the like, oh, this handmade item was in a thrift store. Isn't that so sad? Maybe a sweet little grandma made it. Maybe that grandma did die, but she was a great asshole. And all of her surviving family members hate her guts and don't want anything to do with her, including any of her items. Maybe someone was gifted that by a relative or was passed down to them, but they know they're not going to use it and no one else they know is going to use it. So they donated it somewhere where someone else will find it and use it. There's several reasons why something might be where it is. And I don't get the pearl clutching about it. Centros and knitting machines are hand tools. If someone makes something with them, they're handmade. I will not be taking questions or criticism at this time. Off. It is weird to me that we're getting so caught up on the exact meaning of handmade. And like, I'm referring to both the colloquial term that people are debating about and the technical, like, every piece of apparel is handmade. Even if it's factory made, it is handmade. Humans are operating those machines. Humans are involved in the process. It's handmade. I get that. I acknowledge both of those. I get that this is that the technical definition is a part of the conversation that people have been bringing up. I think it's important to bring up. I am mostly talking about the colloquial definition right now. The like, oh well, it's not handmade actually. Yes, it is. We've always had tools that help us make our art. I would use the like, if someone sews something using a sewing machine, is that not handmade anymore? But I've seen someone actually say that no, it's not handmade. Wild. No, we should not subject sewists to hand sewing everything. Are you a sadist? Like, not to kink shame. But what do you mean? What do you mean? It's interesting to me. We've seen this like rise of trad content somewhat recently over the past, year or two. That's hit more mainstream than a lot of stuff does. It can be hard for me to tell because I'm very aware that I'm in an algorithmic bubble And a lot of that bubble is dissecting what the is going on in the far right. But I might be seeing something that's not there. So please let me know if anyone else has noticed this. Handmade things and a lot of crafts, things that are traditionally considered to be crafts, sewing, knitting, crocheting, needlepoint mediums and techniques. Those are all tied up in trad. I should know. I was raised Mormon. I learned to crochet indirectly in that context, and I learned embroidery in that context, and how to sew in that context. I'm suspicious. I'm suspicious of people getting weird about the goddamn definition of handmade and also separating handmade from homemade. Oh no, it has mistakes in it. Off. I get that if you are making something and you want it to look like could come out of the store, I get that. Not my thing, but I understand. I understand, like the petite knit thing. I understand, like, that's a niche that she fills in the pattern market. Completely get it. But, like, why are we bashing things that look homemade or trying to separate it and say that, like something that is handmade shouldn't look homemade? Weird. Weird and strange. If the craftsmanship is poor, I guess that's the layman's way to say that the craftsmanship is poor. But that's not necessarily true either. And you could say the same thing about plenty of mass produced items that are in stores. Most fast fashion clothing, right? That's kind of ubiquitous, is the craftsmanship is poor. It's not the fault of the people being worked to the bone in factories. It's the fault of the corporations for giving them shitty materials, right? Why is it suddenly so important that we specify that tools that make our lives easier reduce the wear on our bodies and allow us to actually make more things and that require like a different set of skills than hand knitting or hand crocheting, even though you there aren't really crochet machines. Hand knitting, especially, or hand sewing. Why are we suddenly saying that using those tools is bad now? Especially since not only does it make someone's life easier generally, make it easier for people to make more things, which, if you're into making your own clothing and you have a big family, is important, but also that make it easier for disabled people to make and engage in those hobbies and those arts. It's a bit suspicious. That's all I'm going to say about that. It's suspicious to me. Laziness is a scourge. The concept is a scourge, not like finding an easy way to do something. I do think the conversation gets more complex when you start talking about people who have like an actual platform, and therefore have a responsibility to the people viewing their stuff, to their follower base. I think it's important to emphasize why those things that improve our craftsmanship are important. Because usually improved craftsmanship is associated with improved quality and longevity. But like if someone decides to use hot glue, that's not a problem, though. Oh no, this person decides to knot their ends instead of weaving them in. How awful. The world is going to end. People care to different extents. People put different amounts of brain energy into things. And while part of the reason I enjoy fiber arts and all of the types of art I engage in is like improving and learning new techniques. I'm learning several with this. Like if someone isn't interested in learning all those new techniques and wants to make the same thing over and over and over again, I get that to some extent because for a long time I made the same amigurumi patterns over and over and over and over again. I don't get not wanting to improve, but also it's not my life and not my problem, and it doesn't devalue the craft. Straight up, it doesn't. They could be the like quote unquote laziest person in the world. They could cut so many corners, it's a circle, and it still wouldn't devalue the craft. I understand being frustrated, and I'm not saying that people can't complain, right? But it's not productive to just call people lazy or say that they're devaluing the craft that they also partake in because they don't do it the way you want it to be done. because they don't use the best craftsmanship techniques. If someone's being an asshole about cutting corners, that's a different thing, right? It's shitty to say that someone's devaluing an entire tradition because they don't want to do what all of the steps because that individual doesn't want to do all of the steps. Speaking of hating and complaining, I do think it's okay to be a hater. Like all of these things, like it's shitty to just straight up call people lazy. It's also okay to be frustrated and annoyed at people who cut corners all the time. Like it's also okay to not like someone because they're popular or not like certain patterns because they're going around a lot. I was annoyed with the Sophie scarf for a long time. And honestly, seeing petite knit stuff everywhere, at least at this point in time, never say never, you know? Uh, at this point in time, is putting me off of her patterns a little bit, but I already wasn't super drawn to them. I get it. I do. I am also sometimes a hater. That's actually part of why I like these videos, because you hear different perspectives. And sometimes you watch Mark Vogel's video on it and you go, I've been a little bit. Let me examine that and make sure my moral structure and my opinions about this thing actually line up. And like, I also think it's fine for people, no matter what size platform they have, to complain about shit just because they don't think it's popular. Wait, I guess because they think it shouldn't be popular, because they're annoyed because it's popular. I full on didn't get the Sophie scarf at first. And I was like, yeah, I'm just not going to use it. And like, it's a little annoying that it's showing up everywhere. And I got more and more frustrated. My frustration was fed by seeing other people's frustration. But I think that's just something we all have to be responsible about, right? You'll have to be aware of that and know when to be like, okay, I'm an adult, not that, not that serious. The Sophie scarf isn't going to cause World War III. It's literally just a popular scarf pattern. It's fine. To be petty is to be human, you know? It's fine. It's fun. It's cathartic. I get it. But there's a difference, especially when you're talking about people, especially when something like misogyny could be playing a piece, like with petite knits. There's a difference between complaining about your coworker, Deborah, because she talks too loud when she's at the water cooler, or she never pushes in her chair, or you just don't like her vocal, like the way she talks. It's even okay, in fact, I would say encouraged, to talk to your coworkers or your boss about how Deborah doesn't take feedback well, or she doesn't do the things says she's going to do, or she says she does them, but she half-asses it. Fine, completely, like legitimately. I think that's fine, actually. I don't think it's good and cool to staple a post-it note to her cubicle wall about how she's terrible and awful and the worst person ever and the reason why this company is shitty, where she and all of your coworkers and your boss can see it. And potentially like clients can see it. That's not cool. You cannot like someone and not just be an asshole. You can be petty and not just be an asshole, and not hate someone for existing because they make patterns you don't like and that you're like annoyed by seeing everywhere. Annoyance is not harm. And on the other end, if someone is complaining about something you like, that doesn't mean they think you're a bad person for liking it. It's a two-way street. Along the theme of, I guess it would be group mentality a little bit, having the one true way for beginners to start out is a little silly and counterproductive, in my opinion. Oh, everyone should start with granny squares. Everyone should start with washcloths. Everyone should start with swatches. Normalize asking a beginner like what they want to start with. And if it's something that's truly not a beginner thing, like they want to start with a cable sweater, crochet or knit, and they're coming to you for help, or you're making educational resources for beginners, point them towards things that'll help them learn the foundations. Because all of these things, from like amigurumi to a granny square to a washcloth to a garment, just straight up a garment, all teach foundational skills. There are beginner versions and good beginner versions, free beginner versions that are like quality, even of patterns for pretty much anything. For amigurumi, you learn how to work in the round, either continuously or seamed. You learn single crochet. You learn how to increase and decrease. You learn how to close something off at the end and how to weave in ends. Granny squares, you learn either half double, but usually, or double crochet, probably double crochet. You learn the granny stitch, which is super helpful for a lot of things. You learn how to work in the round. You learn how to turn corners. You learn how to sew things together because you're going to have to, because you're making something out of granny squares. You learn how to change colors, which you might learn with amigurumi too. I guess you don't have to learn how to change colors with granny squares, but that's pretty common. Washcloths are and scarves are just glorified swatches. Sweaters, you learn, for example, you know, you learn all sorts of things. And that is going to be a trial by fire, but some people work best that way. You can't start a crochet project without knowing how to chain and how to turn rows. So, like, yes, you need to learn those first. But after that, whatever keeps them in is the best option. I do think advice is fine to give and even encouraged, going, hey, that yarn's a bit difficult to work with. It's a bit difficult to see stitches. Maybe this yarn would work and would give you a similar effect to what you want while being easier to see. Or this yarn will make the project more manageable generally, whatever it is. Like I'm not talking about things like a workshop where the point is to teach a beginner how to knit or crochet or sew or what have you. And the point is to teach them by teaching them how to make a thing. That's different. But I've seen things where people go, no, actually, they should learn with swatches. It's usually swatches, and that gets me. Partially because I would want to break my crochet hook if I was told I had to start with swatches. Granny squares, also not great for me, mostly because of how I need to see progression in a project to stay interested in it. That's why I like things like stripes and variegated yarn. Prescriptive anything bothers me because, like, why is it prescriptive though? Why are you so intent on it being only this way? Why are you not allowing that flexibility? Or why are you discounting that flexibility? Odd. Speaking of variegated yarn, a lot of especially mass produced variegated yarn is ugly. And a lot of hate for variegated yarn is not knowing how to use it. And also, why are we saying that indie dyers are lying because it looks their yarn, their variegated yarn looks different worked up than it looks in the hank? Yeah, of course it does. What do you mean? I get that it's more common now for like big companies to have swatches of their variegated yarn. But like if you're buying it in a store, they're not gonna have that as far as I'm aware. Of course it looks different. It's in a different format. It would look different in a skein or a ball or a cake too than it would look in a hank. It is your responsibility as the person who bought it. If you bought especially indie yarn, variegated indie yarn online, and there's not a swatch, that's on you if you can't figure out how to make it work. That's part of the inherent risk of getting variegated yarn. And knowing how to work with it is a skill, is a specific color theory related skill, like color theory and composition related skill. And it's something you have to build. And sometimes you get yarn and you realize you can't use it for that project. And you have to pivot. And that's frustrating, but it's not the dyer's fault. I'm not touching acrylic yarn. Everyone talks about it. Acrylic yarn, fine. Send tweet. Next thing, a lot of masculine fashion, like made for purpose masculine fashion. I'm not talking about like, oh, you can wear anything sort of deal. I agree with that. I agree that clothes don't have a gender and color doesn't have a gender and motifs don't, and you can wear whatever you want, go off. Also, I'd like to look mask. I'd like to make clothes I'll actually wear. And sometimes I don't want to have to think, like put as much thought into how to change it to make it work for me. I like that sometimes. I like that even a lot of times. But I don't want just polo shirt and cream and teal number 5 or cable knit sweater with form fitting sleeves in cream. or maybe navy blue or maroon if you're lucky, if we're feeling fancy, if we're feeling a bit fruity, or a mesh shirt. That's more of a personal thing though. I don't have, it's not my style. I think it's fun. I think it's on the fun end. And some people are doing very cool things. I'm not saying that there's no variety, but there's so much less than for femme, like made for purpose femme fashion, and a lot of unisex fashion based on how the pattern designer portrays it in the promo photos. They intend it to be more feminine, even when it's literally just a ribbed beanie. And I do take that into account. And I think people generally do take that into account, like take what the pattern photos look like into account when they're deciding on a pattern. To go back to the Sophie scarf, I didn't get why people like the Sophie scarf, period. I recognized that it was a style thing, but I like fully did not understand until I saw someone who styled it more masculinely. And it was the first time I'd seen someone do that. And I was like, oh, okay, still not my thing, but like I get it. The styling of garments matters a lot too. And we could be doing so much better as fiber artists than we are in that regard. Like, I get that mainstream male fashion is boring, but like, we're not mainstream male fashion. We're fiber arts. There are plenty of amazing techniques and cool details in the basics, but like, we really only have the basics. I am trying to do something about that. I am trying to get to the point where I can make more interesting mask clothing. I'm not just complaining and doing nothing about it, but also if someone is just complaining about it, I think that's fine. Not everyone is a knitwear designer. Not everyone is a garment designer, crochet wear designer, what have you. Consumers of patterns can express that they want different patterns. And also, I get like the societal reasons why there's more feminine stuff than masculine stuff. From there are just more people in fiber arts who are interested in femme clothing, to more stuff is considered femme clothing generally. I get it. We could still be doing more than we are. Also, form fitting sleeves, terrible, awful, 0 out of 10. Um, they personally want me dead. I get why they're a thing. I hate them. They make me want to crawl out of my skin. Cap sleeves are worse though, and part of that is dysphoria and baggage. But regardless, I just straight up don't think cap sleeves usually look good. They look fine. They look neutral. I don't think people who have cap sleeve garments look bad, but I don't think I don't think it does anything. Same thing with like short sleeves that have the tighter ribbing around them. No, no, I don't like it. It looks like sensory hell. Also, another thing, food motifs. Get it away from me. Why are we doing that? I don't want a tapestry that looks like pepperoni pizza. I want to not be psychologically tortured, is what I want. So that's all I've got. If you, hypothetical person on the internet, happen to have opinions about this, let me know. I hope you have done all the things you need to do today. If you haven't, that's fine. Me too, bestie. Stay safe, stay well, and I'll see you next time.